Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. We are taking a short break from our SBF coverage to bring you what I would say is a normal OPJ episode. In fact, this is an interview I recorded a few weeks ago now, I would say, maybe 3 weeks ago, with Zeke Faux. He is a Bloomberg investigative reporter, and he is the author of a relatively new book, Number Go Up. It's a very funny, but certainly quite critical look at the crypto and NFT mania that we all lived through in the last couple of years. And it's fantastic. It's a really good book. I'm going to say this with Zeke, so you'll probably have to hear this twice, but I really recommend that people check it out. And in this conversation with Zeke, we dive into points where we both agree and where I maybe disagree with the way that Zeke covers crypto and NFTs. So we debate the value of it, which I think was fun. And Zeke shares his story about going to Ape Fest and buying his Bored Ape. We talk about digital art. We talk about using MetaMask and Zeke using MetaMask for the first time. We talk a little bit about Alex Mashinsky and the Celsius situation. And then we do, at the end, dive into some things on Sam Bankman-Fried. Zeke actually met SBF on a number of occasions. He was with him for like 10 hours right after FTX collapsed in November of 2022. Bearing in mind that this episode was recorded 3 weeks ago. So we recorded this before the trial of SBF had started, before I knew even as much as I know now about what went on at FTX, given that I've been in the courtroom every day. By the way, if you have not checked out some of our live-ish coverage, as in day of coverage of the FTX SBF trial, please do go check that out. I hate to say this because obviously it's a terrible situation, but a lot of fun covering this trial. So you can find that on the YouTube channel and in the podcast as well. And just as a final note, because some people have been asking, yes, I will do NFT content again. I am taking this break just temporarily while this trial is going on because I live near the courthouse, and I think it's been really interesting for me to get to cover this trial and sort of explore a different part of the crypto ecosystem that I don't cover as often, and I've been really enjoying that. But the NFT coverage will return, don't you worry. I have a trip tentatively planned to Hong Kong to do a whole series of interviews in Hong Kong that may interfere with the trial a bit, so I may even have to pause my trial coverage at the end of the month. So we'll see. We're flying by the seat of our pants. We're taking it one day at a time, covering what we think is interesting and most important for y'all to hear, and hopefully it all pays off. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Okay, with that, my always reminders, you can redeem for your bottle of gin at the link in the show notes. You can also register for the event that's coming up in 2 days on October 11th with Raoul Pal. Use the link in the show notes to register for that event if you want to come hang out with Raoul and I in New York City. And with that, we need to hear a word from the amazing sponsors who make this show possible, and then it'll be on to my conversation with the amazing Zeke Faux. Let me tell you about OPENSEA Studio. Yes, you know OPENSEA. Perhaps you use OPENSEA, but did you know they launched OPENSEA Studio? It's a one-stop shop for all creators to launch and manage their projects. Using OPENSEA Studio, you can create and manage a drop end-to-end, including setting up allow list phases, uploading media and metadata, which has helpful preview functionality, and building the drop page itself. You can also mint an NFT or collection where the creator owns the contract. OPENSEA Studio lets you build on all blockchains compatible with OPENSEA, and there are 8 of them. Lets buyers mint an NFT from your collection using a credit or debit card, and there are no coding or technical skills required to do any of the above. OPENSEA will be adding more features and functionality to OPENSEA Studio over the coming months, including revamped collection pages with new storytelling modules, and more ways to leverage NFT technology, including redeemables, which y'all know I'm a huge fan of, and analytics. I'm an OPENSEA user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the NFT ecosystem, supporting, as I said, 8 chains in 8 global languages. And because I trust the systems they've built to help keep the space safe, like copyright protection, malicious URL detection or removal, robust verification, and more. It is why they are the place to buy, sell, and now create NFTs. Check them out at the link below, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Y'all know the phrase, not your keys, not your crypto. Well, in a world where too many people have had to learn that the hard way, Overpriced JPEGs is proud to partner with Ledger, the world leader in critical digital asset security. Ledger's Nano S Plus and Nano X hardware wallets, paired with the Ledger Live app, Ledger's own software for setting up your Nano device and managing your crypto assets, is the easiest way to start your crypto journey while maintaining full control of your digital assets. You can use all your favorite dApps with Ledger Live, accessing 15 plus Web3 apps, including 1inch, Paraswap, Lido, and Zerion.
so you can not only manage, but also grow your portfolio. And Ledger Live is available on mobile and desktop. Securing digital assets shouldn't be complicated. Ledger is as easy as it gets. Uncompromising security, effortless connectivity, full transparency, Ledger is your one-stop shop to trade and track crypto, grow your assets, and manage NFTs. Secure your future with Ledger. Visit shop.ledger.com today or check out the link in the show notes.
Zeke Fox, welcome to Overpriced JPEGs.
Thank you, Carly. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really stoked for this conversation. I've realized I've been talking to too many people who agree with me. Given how excited I am about this conversation, I'm like, I've had too many people in my echo chamber speaking my language for the last 2 years, and I'm ready to introduce a little conflict into Overpriced JPEGs. I want to show everybody your book.
Wait, but I thought this was like an anti-NFT podcast. Like, aren't you saying that the JPEGs are like overpriced?
That is the genius. That's my marketing genius right there, Zeke, is that I can appeal to all people, you know? The people who love the JPEGs come on the show because I can be like, yes, it's very tongue-in-cheek. And then I can fool the schmucks like you who hate them.
I'm walking out right now. This interview's over.
Well, wait for me to tell the people how good your book is and then decide if you would like to leave the show. Truly, though, if you're not watching on YouTube, but I am holding up Zeke's book, Number Go Up, I really recommend people read it, as you're clearly gleaning based on our banter here. Zeke is not the biggest fan of crypto. He spent 2 years investigating the industry, I would say. I mean, it started with an investigation of Tether, but it really took you to a lot of different corners of crypto. So, and NFTs a little bit as well. 2 years? How long was it? I'll let you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I got started out. I was skeptical of crypto, but really didn't know that much about it. And I was kind of resistant to the idea of investigating it because I'm like a serious investigative reporter who spent, 10 years looking into like shady business on Wall Street. And usually like the shady business is very hidden. And the fun part is like working really hard to try to uncover it. But if somebody is just like, hey, moonbirds, and then the price just starts like going up and up, what am I supposed to investigate? Like, what is there for me? And so reusing a joke from the book, but I felt like sending like a, professional investigative reporter to look into crypto would be like sending like Sam Sifton, the like snooty New York Times restaurant reviewer, to go review like the new Taco Bell in Union Square or whatever. So I didn't want to do it.
We're so stupid that we were beneath you. It wasn't even worth. Well, it's funny. I heard you say that on another show, and obviously I also read it in the book. But I don't think Moonbirds, for example, is the right example. I think the funnier thing, or the thing that struck me as interesting, was something like Celsius or like Alex Mashinsky. And you actually have a very funny moment when you first encounter Alex Mashinsky. You write it very funny. The book is very funny, folks, I will say. And this is why I recommend, truly, people should go read it. Even if you're like me and we love crypto, we love NFTs, we believe in this fundamental technology. The book is really, really worth the read. And I think you'll learn things. I learned things. But then it's also just like an adventure story. So it's great. But like something like a Celsius, where you were like, this is just so obviously, this can't be real.
Yeah.
Right. And like, what is even the point? Almost like it's hard to investigate because you can say fundamentally this math doesn't make any sense, but the people who are bought in clearly are already bought in and don't seem to care or seem to believe Alex over you. And then the people who aren't in Celsius because they think it's shady are like, well, yeah, we all know this.
So I think you are right there, but I also think that like my original idea that crypto was not a good place for an investigative reporter was obviously wrong. And there were, and I learned it was wrong early on because I went to Bitcoin Miami 2021, and that's where I first met Alex Mashinsky. And he was actually very nice to me. We first met at the hotel, and he was like, hey, I was like, I think I'm interviewing you tomorrow. He's like, oh, you want to borrow my wristband and go see Diplo? And I was like, not really, but I guess it's my job to go do things like this, so I can't really say no. But then when we had our real interview, he laid out his business plan, which was like, we pay up to 18% interest, and if you want a loan, the loans are like 0% interest. And I'm like, all right, I know a little bit about banking. This is like opposite banking. This is a recipe to losing money. And I was so poorly informed that I didn't even really know that much about him. And I was like, all right, just sort of being polite. how much money do you manage with your business plan that like a kindergartner could see the flaws in? And he's like, oh, $20 billion. And I'm like, what? And he gave me this line that I knew was iconic as soon as he said it, which he's like, the thing is that like the financial system's screwing you. The banks could pay you really high interest rates, but they just choose not to because they like being so rich, these like greedy bankers. And he's like, the banks are lying that they could, about these 0% interest rates. He's like, somebody is lying. Either it's the banks or Alex Mashinsky. And like, I made sure to print that, but as like a reporter, I don't usually write, and I think the person lying is Alex Mashinsky. But like, that's why I thought that line was funny, obviously, and why I liked it. And so I also met Sam Bankman-Fried at this conference. I heard Michael Saylor talking about how Bitcoin is like the path to like infinite life and we're all going to be rich. I heard Max Kaiser screaming about Elon Musk. Oh, and the most insane part was the strike guy, Jack Mallers, announcing that El Salvador is going to adopt Bitcoin. He's literally crying. He's crying on stage. And then I look around, other people are crying. And I flew back to New York, and I told my editor I was very wrong about crypto. In fact, it's a great topic. I could write about this for years. I will not be able to investigate all of these people before their companies blow up. Because I had been sort of under the impression that crypto was going mainstream. Even though I was skeptical of crypto, you'd always see these headlines that like, Visa is trying out Solana or whatever. That's one I saw recently.
Right.
And they give you this impression that like there's this wave of institutional adoption that's right around the corner. And so I sort of had that in my head when I went there. And then I was just like, oh no, this is like this crazy cult of Bitcoiners and plus some people with like really weird business plans. This whole world is really a lot crazier than I imagined. And it would be really fun to write about. There is stuff to investigate, and I should do it.
So there's so much there. I want to say I love the moment, just because you're talking about the Alex Mashinsky moment in the book. You're like, he's describing you ask him how much he has under management, and he says, and you were expecting nothing, because you're like, this is an insane scheme. And then he says 18 billion or whatever. And in the book, you write, that's what I was imagining, I murmured, trying to keep a straight face. And it's just like the style in which you write this is very funny. Just you as sort of this like guileless, like kind of innocent coming into this world and then just getting smacked in the face with how ridiculous so much of it is. But, and this is obviously, we'll get to this throughout this conversation because I do want to push back. Like, I will never fight you that there is, but certainly during the bull was an insane amount of shenanigans and craziness and wild schemes like Celsius and others. But what I feel like you don't capture in this, and I'm curious if that's because you don't agree or believe this at all, or if it's just because for the sake of this book and the tone and the narrative, you chose to go one particular direction, which is that there is something at its core very interesting and compelling about blockchain. And while the UX is still not great, as you discovered firsthand, trying to convert money from Coinbase to MetaMask to then get WETH to then buy your ape monkey, like, the UX still leaves something to be desired, but there is a core here that is actually innovative, that is very interesting, and that I think could have a profound role in the way we live our lives in the future. So maybe I'll kick off and just ask you, like, do you agree with any of that? Or do you fully think that there is nothing legitimate or interesting or innovative about blockchain and the various things that spring up as a result of blockchain?
I would just say that I've been hearing these pitches about blockchain since 2017. In 2017, I went to Consensus, like the company, and I spent a whole day there hearing their pitches about how they were going to blockchain every fish in the sea and everybody's passport and like all this other stuff. And none of it happened. And then in 2020, I heard a whole nother round of pitches about how blockchain was the future. And now the people telling me those pitches are like mostly bankrupt or in jail. So
well,
when you tell me like
bad friends, Zeke, you keep bad. Your company was particularly bad, if I may say.
So, but when you're telling me now, oh, come on, like this time is different, like blockchain is really going to be the future, I'm saying, like, how do we memory hole its like horrible track record? And how do we, like, I think it should be judged on what it's accomplished, not if I'm thinking like what technology should I put my energy into the future, I would be like not one that has such a horrible track record of just attracting scammers.
Well, so let me respond to that in a couple of ways. I think the first thing is you mentioned 2017. That was 6 years ago. And while I know you like to bring up like, oh, Uber's 14 years old or whatever, that's younger than Bitcoin, for example, right? You use that as to say this technology hasn't fulfilled any of the things that people said it was going to. And it's been around for longer than Uber. But I would say Uber's an app, right? Like I would say this is much more akin to the internet, which first existed in the 1960s, right? I would say the internet took 50 to 60 years to really come to the point that we know it as now. And I think part of the problem is that...
So, okay, but...
Okay, go ahead, push back, and then I'll say one more thing.
I've heard this internet thing too.
Yeah.
And you guys like to cherry pick, that you put the internet starting date super, super early to make it seem like the internet was super slow. But I was there I'm 38. I was around for the early days of the internet. Like I was on bulletin boards. I had a dial-up modem. It was awesome. Right away, we were using it to do cool things like play games online. I could access information that I had no way of getting otherwise. Like I was on the internet before AOL, and its appeal was immediately obvious to me.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody
but
had
not
to
to
tell
everybody.
me, to lots of people. And when Facebook came out, nobody had to tell me that I should download Facebook. Everyone at college was talking about it right away. It was a really appealing product, and everybody wanted to use it. And so the fact that crypto is not one app, but it's like hundreds of apps, none of which work right, I don't think is a selling point for crypto.
Well, so forget the time. I almost don't even like playing the like timeline game. You know what I mean? Of like, well, when do we mark the start of the internet? When do we mark the start of crypto? Like, you're right. These are different technologies at the end of the day. Like, you know, what their use cases are going to end up looking like will end up being different, et cetera, et cetera. What I would say is that at a fundamental level, the idea of digital scarcity, whether you're talking about it on the currency side, where I think the interesting piece, and I think you even acknowledge this at the end of the book, where the interesting thing is it's a really efficient cross-border payment system, which, you know, I think the G20, or not the G20, the UN General Assembly is meeting this week. And one of their sustainability goals is how do we bring down the costs of remittances and cross-border payments? Like that is clearly a real issue that crypto has the potential to solve, and that blockchain is a good solve for. And go ahead. I know you're chomping at the bit because I know you've heard that one before. Hold on. And then yeah. Global store of value, like global dollar store of value. Like you have that side of things. But if I may just round out this thought, and then you have where I live, right, which is the NFT side of things, where the idea of digital ownership that more realistically mirrors real world ownership in the way that we experience here feels like an inevitability. And we can talk about what maybe some of those paths to getting there are. But I just take it like first principles. I look at that and I say, this makes sense. And that's where I kind of start. So go ahead and now push back on me.
Well, you've given me so much. The idea of an NFT, again, like it's an appealing idea, but there's like a lot of benefits to centralization. Like that a lot of the flaws in NFTs could be solved if one central company was in charge of your ownership of Bored Apes and could determine that like this had been hacked and return it to you or whatever. And I would also say that like I loved when I was a kid, I was a big nerd when I was a kid. I loved playing Magic cards. I totally get the idea of collectibles and that you might want digital collectibles. But I think with these NFT projects, they are all about to make them to be so focused on the monetary value takes away the thing that makes art or collectibles appealing. Like you can't put the monetary value before the game. I can't just be like, oh, now I have Zeke cards and like they're better than Magic cards and buy them. Like Magic cards they've become like a part of our culture for, you know, a couple decades now. That's why they've become collector's items. And for people to just be like, oh, this is my like Grail Moonbird, I would say that's going to be forgotten in a couple of years. And no matter how hard you try to make it a thing.
No comment on Moonbird specifically, but I totally agree with you. And I actually think that one of the problems, and this is why my concern is that people who haven't looked into crypto and blockchain the way you have and don't actually understand its what I would consider its core, will read your book and get even further away from understanding its core. Because what happened to me over the last 2 years was that the financial speculation, the money that was being made, the scams, they got so out of control that people saw the making money and the speculation as the product. And I think that was actually the problem, because I think you do have a technology that isn't really fully consumer ready yet and is really janky and needs regulation. And we can get into that piece of things as well. And was premature, but has this weird financialization element to it that was able to attract a lot of consumers just on the back of that. And then that's all it became known for. And I think that has actually really hurt the industry. So I don't even disagree with you. I think the idea that we're gonna pay me now and I'll deliver you the utility later is totally backwards. And this was nothing more than a lot of casinoing that doesn't take away for me from that core value proposition that's interesting. And yes, there's value to centralization. Let me just address, there's value to centralization, but there's value to having both. And depending on the country you're in, you may or may not like you may like decentralization more or less, right? Like decentralization is really appealing in a country where your centralized institutions are failing.
Oh, sure. I guess I meant that more in terms of like some of the things that make NFTs and crypto and blockchain are the same things that make them janky.
There's a very real question that you're actually getting at, which is the thing we think of as one of the core value propositions of this technology actually like the seed of its decline, in the sense that culture can't be allowed to flourish naturally and cool will never bubble up to the top naturally if there's financial speculation incentives attached to it? And the answer very well may be yes. And then the question is, can brands that currently exist, your Gucci's, your whatever, as they issue digital twins for the physicals that they're issuing, like can a culture for digital ownership bubble up separate from the financial incentive piece? Because that's the only way it's going to work.
I mean, maybe like financialization of everything ruins fun and ruins community. and that okay, when I was buying my Bored Ape, or my Mutant Ape, I saw a big risk to ape prices that I felt like everyone was totally discounting, which I knew from in college. I'd bought a Bape sweatshirt. It was called a Bathing Ape, and it was like the streetwear brand. It was really hot.
Oh yeah,
and
I got Soulja Boy. I got my Bathing Ape. He drops something. About
yeah. I think that's how I heard about it. Yeah, and so I wanted one. I think I got a knockoff for like $50 or something, which was like a lot for a sweatshirt. The real ones were like 1,000, but like a couple of years later, they were at Salvation Army. You could get them at Salvation Army. Bape was not cool anymore. And when you buy one of these into one of these PFE collections, you're betting on its continued coolness when we know that most things don't stay cool for that long.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree is the answer. I mean, I've had David Horvath, who created Ugly Dolls, if you know Ugly Dolls, on, and he talks about toys have like a 7-year life cycle, unless there's like play pattern. There's kind of different categories within the toy universe, but with IP, things usually have like a 7-year window. Things don't necessarily last and stay cool. And this is where I said this at the top. I don't remember if I said it when we were recording or before we recorded, but I was sensing that we would maybe come out of this conversation, and the truth is we actually probably agree on a lot of things. And I think where our focus is just different. Like your focus is on, look at all of the unbelievably ridiculous, funny and silly and stupid things that happened in this world. What a mania. How did all these people fall for this? And my argument is that a lot of people, I think a lot of people didn't fall for it. I think a lot of people are smart and would make the arguments I would make about the core interesting philosophy here that I still believe is, I think there's something very core here that's very interesting, and then would recognize that a lot of the rest of this was gambling, and unfortunately a lot of people overplayed their hand and didn't sell out early enough, myself included. I mean, I'm holding so many freaking
what's in your portfolio?
Oh my God, I am the worst NFT trader of all time. We talked offline about how you made money on Neil Strauss. I made so little money on NFTs because I just didn't sell anything ever. And so I just would hold things, and then they've all gone down. My first NFT buys were Gary Vaynerchuk's, were VeeFriends. No, they're good though. I still like my VeeFriends. And they actually are
you bought the scribbles of a wine salesman.
Oh yeah. You're straight up. But see, this is what you do. That's funny, but it's reductive. And so this is why your book is very funny, but why I feel the need to be like the school marm, like the teacher being like, but point of order, actually there's like a ton of depth here that you're not capturing in that very unnuanced answer. And that's how I felt reading your book. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation.
Well,
so if anybody who is a crypto skeptic who loved your book watches this interview, which seems unlikely that they'd want to pick this up, but you never know. They could actually hear some of like the core philosophical reasons that this is interesting. But anyways, yeah, I bought VFriends. They're still up in ETH terms. I minted them, but they're way down on. I put like when I was minting, ETH was like $4,000, so they're down in dollar terms.
Did you go to VCon? I thought about going to VCon, but it was in like Minneapolis.
I spoke at VCon both years.
Whoa.
Yeah, both years. Well, I moderated at VCon, and I spoke last year. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm a VConner.
Paul was like Logan Paul there, maybe. You get like some.
Oh
Paul
yeah,
brothers?
actually, Logan Paul was there the first year. I sat next to him on the flight back. So VCon booked our flights. I was in the same row as Logan Paul and Nina Agdal, who's now his fiance. But I'm a really not. You and I will fully agree on Logan Paul. I can't stand Logan Paul, and I think he's really a bad.
No, he's one of the good NFT guys. I own several Logan Paul. What are they like?
Pets?
What does he call
what
them?
Were they called? Weren't they pets or something?
There's like the Polaroids. They're like the 99 or something.
I know of the project that CoffeeZilla really helped to expose. He had like a game, an NFT game that he was hawking for a long time with a token and everything.
Well, can I tell like I want to tell the Bored Ape story.
Okay, tell the Bored Ape story.
So we know what we're talking about. All right. When I was going into this, I was midway through this crypto investigation, and a lot of people, like many people who are listening to the show right now, who, if I had met you back then, a lot of people had this criticism, which was like, you haven't tried crypto, you don't know how it works, you haven't experienced it. And I got to thinking, you know what, like maybe you have a point, maybe I am missing out, maybe there is something about crypto's appeal that would be more apparent to me if I bought a valuable NFT. And the conversation that I recount in the book was with somebody who owned a Solana monkey business NFT.
And wouldn't let you into their party.
He wouldn't let me into the party. And no hard feelings about that if you're listening, Solana monkey business guy. But he was like, people spend massive amounts of money to buy monkeys because they believe in it. Invest heavily in crypto, lose your ass, come back for more, make insane money, learn about monetary policy and tech in the process, make incredible friends who share those same experiences. And I was like, like maybe he has a point, but at the time, Solana monkey business cost $25,000. And I was like, there is no way I'm paying $25,000 for a Solana monkey business. Like, this is garbage. It's just a knockoff. I want the real thing. I'm going to go for a Bored Ape. And conveniently, Ape Fest 2022 was coming up in New York. So if I got one, I could get into this week-long festival, and I'd get to meet other top Bored Ape people, which is like good for the book. I thought it'd be good material. And this is the one that all the celebrities had, so that's always good material for a book too. Might meet some famous people.
Love it. We love it. Great content.
Yeah. At the time, a floor ape at the time, I think was like maybe 300 grand. Does that sound reasonable? Or like 500?
Yeah. They were probably more like 300 grand, but.
I was happy to learn that mutant apes qualified, and a floor mutant at the time was 40 grand. I got an advance for the book, so I had 40 grand, but I'm not like a degen at heart, so I was not actually going to go do this without asking my wife. Good man. We stand. So one night after dinner, the kids are in bed. I'm like, Nikki, I got to talk to you about something for the book. And I explained about like, she kind of knew what Bored Apes were. Like, we talk about this stuff sometimes. Like, I explained more about them, and I was like, there's this party coming up. I really want to go. You need a mutant ape. They're pretty expensive. And she's like, well, what are we talking about? Is this like, she knows that it's going to be expensive if I'm asking her. So, but she's
sitting
like,
her down. It's like,
yeah.
Are you
so
sitting?
She's like, it's a serious convo. And she's like, all right, are they like $5,000? And I'm like, they actually cost this one of 10,000 JPEG of like a melted monkey cost $40,000. And she's horrified. She's just like, oh God. Like, I knew this would be bad, but that's like a year of college. And I'm like, listen, I explained, I really want to go. I think it'd be, frankly, I've convinced by this monkey business guy's arguments. I just felt like the readers of the book want to know what happens at Ape Fest. I got to go and see it for myself, and maybe it will be cool. I mean, I don't want to rule out that possibility.
Maybe I'll suddenly decide that I absolutely love the community.
I mean, maybe I'll be won over by like all the cool stuff that happens at Ape Fest and all of the activations with my mutant ape. Maybe I'll learn and I'll be part of this like great. I mean, I'm a storyteller. Maybe I will enjoy the collective storytelling of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And so she's like, and maybe we'll make money on it. I mean, they do go up sometimes. So she's like, all right, here goes Zeke again, whatever, go for it, buy your ape. So, and then I really hadn't used MetaMask before. And so I didn't anticipate this being like a challenge particularly hard. I use computers all day long. I'm not a programmer, but whatever.
You're technically illiterate, yeah.
I used to make websites in HTML like when I was a kid. And the actual process of using MetaMask was so horrible that it was shocking to me. It was like, I know you're listening to this now and you're like, it's not that bad. I use it every day. And I can see how you get used to it. But like first off, I don't know, you might have signed up before this, but they make you watch an instructional video that tells you, and I'm going to use the wrong words now. And you're guys going to be like, oh, it's like the private keys. It's not the password. Don't care. The consumer doesn't care. So I'm like, they make you watch this video that says you should engrave your password on a metal plate and bury it in your backyard. And I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. Get out of here. I just want to go to a party. What is wrong with this app? And then I've never been I had to wire the money to Coinbase and Bank of America called me. I'd never been so happy to hear from a bank customer service rep because I was already feeling frustrated. And they're like, Zeke, it appears you're trying to send $20,000 to Coinbase. Are you aware that this is often a scam? Are you really trying to do this? Did somebody trick you? And I'm like, thank you, customer service rep. I never liked Bank of America before, but I'm so grateful to you now. And he's like, well, listen, like, we think you're getting scammed. And I'm like, I actually am getting scammed. I'm about to pay $20,000 for a JPEG of this really ugly monkey. And please put the wire through. And
I'm scamming myself. I'm playing myself, Bank of America.
Yeah. And okay, if MetaMask is listening to this and OpenSea, so like you always say, don't get hacked.
OpenSea is one of our sponsors for the year, so they probably are listening to this. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
So many pop-ups appear. So many pop-ups. And you have to sign all this shit. Sorry for cursing, but...
Oh, I curse on the show a lot.
Eventually, I would call my friends and be like, what does this one mean? What is WETH? Why is Seaport asking me to do this or that? And it would just be like long strings of gibberish in the pop-up. And finally, I was like, I give up. Maybe I'm getting hacked. It's embarrassing to call my friends for any more technical support. I know I'm not supposed to just click random pop-ups. Everyone tells me on Twitter that's how you get hacked. But it turns out they were not random pop-ups. These were like the right pop-ups, and I was supposed to click them.
You had to be signing this stuff.
Right, I understand.
My husband says, "We the people." He's like, "Oh, is it more we the people that you're converting into?" Yeah. He's like, "What is this?"
I mean, this was not covered in the video that told me to bury my password in the backyard, and like, there was no way for me as like a consumer to easily evaluate whether these pop-ups were legitimate or not, and whether I should click on them. And so I just went for it anyway. I got a floor mutant, and I named him. Like, I follow a lot of people on like crypto Twitter, so I'm not like totally ignorant about how all this stuff works. And I thought like maybe he could become like a more popular mutant, and I could sell him for more if I give him a name. So I named him Dr. Scum, and I honestly thought this mutant was kind of appealing. He had like, as far as mutant apes go, which are like all really gross, but yeah. He's like smoking a pipe. He had a sweater made of maggots. And I was like, he's like a detective or something. And like he's tormented eternally by his maggot sweater. But if he smokes weed in his pipe, it gives him super intelligence, and like he helps the other apes like solve mysteries.
Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about. Web3 Sense. a Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3 Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities' token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3 Sense has data that you want to see with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3 Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it.
I know why you came on this podcast now. It was justice for Dr. Scum, because I know the end of the story is that nobody at ApeFest gave a shit about Dr. Scum's backstory, and now you have your captive audience of NFT fans to tell Dr. Scum's backstory.
Well, and I feel so. Yeah, jumping ahead, the guy who bought Dr. Scum from me thought it was how he was going to get into ApeFest, which is just FYI for future people. NFTs do not count as tickets to ApeFest. There's some whole other thing. If you manage to buy your Bored Ape, that's not enough.
The process changed after you went. Shout out Token Proof, who our friend Fonz who started Token Proof, so that it is a much more seamless NFT becomes your ticket. You didn't have the best. I did some Ape Fests in the era that you did Ape Fest, where you have to stand in line for like 4 hours to get the right to then stand in line again to go to Ape Fest. It was not the best time in Ape Fest history. I'll grant you that.
Yeah. So yeah, at ApeFest, there was nothing to do with my ape. And in fact, I did not bring my ape there really because I was told that if I kept my ape on my phone, it would get hacked. So I was too scared. And plus it's not the ticket. So so I just had a screenshot of my ape like anybody else could have on my phone. And which wasn't even a problem because no one cared. There's nothing to do with my ape at ApeFest. Nobody wanted to see my ape. People would just pretend to be politely interested. It was kind of that like you would sometimes get that kind of like love bombing, like cult thing where everyone's like, oh, it's so great you got your Bored Ape. But I knew what they were thinking. They were thinking that is a floor mutant. You barely got into this party. You're a loser. And like there were kids with way better apes. And for them, it was maybe even more valuable because they could like, drink even though they weren't 21. For me, I mean, whatever. For a crypto conference, it was pretty good. Compared to like Bitcoin 2021, ApeFest had
some of the other
Snoop,
shit you'd seen.
It had Eminem. And I want to congratulate Yuga Labs. I don't know how they did this, but Snoop performed an entire song about how you should buy ApeCoin and not Dogecoin. I was like floored by this. It was not, I don't think he released this publicly.
Probably some heavy ape distributions, I'm guessing, is how they got him to do that. But I don't know. I'm not saying that out of any specific knowledge that Snoop was giving ApeCoin grants.
I also thought that like for every person on crypto Twitter tweeting about NFTs, there was like an army of like 100 people behind them. And then as I looked around and saw more and more people I recognized from crypto Twitter, I was like, what if there's only like 1,000 people in this whole market and they're all right here laughing at not caring about Dr. Scum.
So you also met Jimmy Fallon there. I will again, this is a good example. Like you talk about some of these moments in the book and it's so funny to read these experiences through the eyes of somebody who's again kind of playing this guileless character. I also understand you quite were like learning as you were going through. Sorry, did you want to finish? Because I want to say something. But
no, well, the things that the NFT people are saying are just so ridiculous that it's hard for me to engage with the whatever potential the technology may have. Like everyone was into like IP, right? And I've talked with Hollywood screenwriters who are pitched on making a Bored Ape movie. And first of all, they're like, no, that sounds bad. But also, how many Bored Ape movies will they make? I mean, like, probably one at most, maybe two if it's a hit. So what is the value of having 1/10,000th of the IP rights to this Bored Ape movie? I mean, realistically, you might get, I don't know, $500,000 as the licensing fee to make this movie, right? So the 1/10,000th value of that is $50. And then people are saying that somehow justifies that each ape is going to be worth $500,000. Plus, was that even legally binding?
Right. And I've covered many of these questions and topics on the show. Please see previous episodes of Overpriced JPEGs, where we've talked a lot about intellectual property and the legalities and, does it really transition from one person to the next? I'm totally with you, right? And I think most people who are looking at this, I think a lot of people, some didn't obviously, but a lot of people understood that this was gambling. And I've said this, people who've watched the show know I say this all the time. This is a space that has historically always rewarded abstraction and punished specificity. Because if a project gets too specific about what they are or what they're doing, then people start doing the mental math and saying, oh my God, this ape is absolutely not worth $400,000 so that I can play some game online. But when it's kept really vague and abstract, then it's just a speculative bubble that can keep going up because it can be like, oh, what will it, maybe it'll go up, maybe it'll go up. So I've been talking about this for months. And again, when you talk about this in the book, it's super funny. It's fun to watch your journey through this world as a bit of an outsider, but who does understand it. None of that, I guess my core question to you is, I understand that you have heard a lot of NFT people say a lot of silly things. You heard them say a lot of funny things about IP, maybe while you were there in person. But can you not see how this kind of decentralized digital ownership could have a really interesting role in the future? I'm thinking of I had a conversation with a guy named Herman Narula. He actually runs Improbable, which is the company that's building the Other Side metaverse, which is now Yuga's main project and what they raised at a $4 billion valuation to become, right? And what the problem he's really trying to solve is, how do you get 10,000, 100,000 people in a digital environment, but actually they are all together at once? Because if you think about Travis Scott went and performed in Fortnite, there was 14 million people who attended that conference, but they were all in servers of 100 people a piece, right? How can you actually in real time get 10,000 people, 100,000 people virtually in a space together? And again, start to blur those lines between what is the real world, what is the virtual world, where you actually feel like you're having this experience with other people, where it is socially connected like that. We're far off from fully being there, but I see that, and I think that's really interesting. And I think in a world where we actually are able to experience a concert together from all around the world, or he's British, so he's a cricket match, all together, there's really interesting uses for digital assets that you can bring from experience to experience, and you're not bounded by the servers of one company. And do you reject that on a we'll never get there user experience level? Do you reject that on a nobody will actually care about that level? Or do you accept that, but you're but it's just not here yet, so who fucking cares?
I mean, I think that maybe the last thing is the right thing. I see myself as a writer who's going to go, when that digital experience is here, maybe I will go try it out and I will write about it. I don't call myself some sort of futurist who's going to imagine what's the best kind of technology. I do think that if there was a big demand for interoperable computer games, it would already be fulfilled, and that there might be some obstacles to the idea that you could bring your sword from one game to the other. If that's something that consumers really wanted, the game companies would have already made it happen.
I think there's a psychological difference between, I can bring a identical sword from one game's servers to another game's servers, and I actually have ownership and control over this asset as I would a sword that sits in my living room. And I understand why that psychological difference feels
if you
dumb
owned,
or insignificant to people.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you owned the mega sword of smashing and I was making a computer game, I would be like, no, Carly can't bring the mega sword of smashing. No one's going to want to play against her. She already has the best sword. We're going to start from scratch in my new game. I don't want you to bring your assets from other games. And that's why gamers have totally rejected NFTs. You can't even say the word NFT or they'll freak out and start complaining about your game.
There's a handful that are open to it, but certainly the Creator League saga that folks who listen to this show probably followed, because I covered it a bit, certainly indicates how much gamers hate NFTs. But what I will say to you in the spirit of what you're saying is, Herman Narula, who I just mentioned earlier, who is building Improbable, who's the company that's behind Other Side, he would actually agree with you in the sense that he's like, there's this weird sense that you're going to bring your machine gun from Grand Theft Auto to like your Harry Potter video game. And that's stupid. That's not fair.
I like
Baltimore
that. I think
can't
I saw
handle
that. I think I saw like a viral. I think I saw a viral YouTube or someone did that.
You're on board
and I kind
for
of
that.
liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're ready for that. But that which is why he's saying I think the much more interesting thing is actually this extension of real world experiences that are already socially meaningful to us, where if you actually feel like you can hear the person across the stands who could be in Bangladesh while you're sitting in London cheering for this match that you're all watching virtually. But let's take even like art. I'm imagining that you have to agree that there's clearly a utility to this when it comes to digital artists. And I think you made a comment in the book that I actually really disagree with, which was that, and maybe I'm mischaracterizing this a little bit, but the sense being this was supposed to be about the art, but what I saw was like not a lot of artists. I saw a lot of Bored Ape Yacht Club, weird animal JPEGs. And my pushback is there's actually a ton of artists. I mean, All Seeing Seneca, who actually is one of the artists behind the Bored Ape Yacht Club, is a fine artist. Her background is in fine art, and she makes fine art and is a digital fine artist and puts it on the blockchain.
I would argue that this is not her finest work then.
Well, there's controversy
My Dr. Scum
around...
was not her finest work.
Well, she was contracted out with a specific, task and series by the Yuga Labs team.
Well,
so I wouldn't put that on her.
This is where I'm actually, where the NFT people actually kind of offended me the most, which is that my sister is a fine artist. Go check out sarahfox.net if you would like some physical
Sarah with
art
an H
to complement your
or without an H?
NFT collection. She's got the H. And she paints the female body from kind of unusual perspectives. And her paintings reveal interesting things about her life experience and about how women perceive themselves. And she's in conversation with like hundreds of years of painters. And I feel like a lot of the NFT world, they hire some guy on Fiverr to spin up some cartoons, and then they try and act like, oh, I'm a fine artist now. And it's just it can't be compared. This
is something I want to correct, because there are a lot of incredibly talented, genuine artists who are putting their work on the blockchain because they're digital first artists who previously have only ever been able to monetize through prints. Amber Vittoria is also somebody who paints the female form. She's actually, I partnered with her we did an NFT that you can redeem for a bottle of gin. It's a strict utility NFT, OBJ NFTs. The redemptions are live now. Go to the link in the show notes. But Amber's an amazing artist who's worked as a graphic designer for brands before, but has her own art practice. Very similar, in terms of painting the female form in different ways and exploring that. And she puts her work on the blockchain, and she's absolutely a legitimate artist. And then you have the whole new world of art that is generative art with like a Tyler Hobbs, who I think there's really interesting things happening when it comes to the conversation between art and computer that people will argue it's not art in the same way I imagine people felt photography wasn't art in the early days. They're like, what's this newfangled? But so I really think you're missing that. And I could point you I'll send you a list of artists to look at who are doing things and where the blockchain is
one who I really
super,
like.
super...
Have you ever had Sarah Mayohas on?
I haven't. It's so funny. Sarah Mayohas, I worked for Andrew Yang's presidential campaign, and she was a really early supporter of Yang's presidential campaign. I was the finance director. So I know Sarah from my old life, and then we reconnected a little bit in this, but I haven't had her on it yet. But I mean,
I think that her art is really interesting. I liked her Bitcoin project, which predates the creation of NFTs. I don't think that making digital art is impossible or that there's no use for NFTs. I just think that what I saw in this world and what people were talking about was not digital art. And that as soon as NFTs were created, they're supposed to, it says non-fungible, right? As soon as people just worked really hard to make them as fungible as possible so we could just gamble on them really easily. And isn't that, I've only seen this on Twitter, I've never tried it out.
Shitcoins with pictures.
Yeah, well, people are complaining about Blur. Did they take away the pictures on Blur? Is that what people are complaining
I can
about?
explain to you what you're saying. So Blur took the financialization aspect of NFTs and put it into hyperdrive. They basically created a marketplace with a lot of liquidity so that you could trade these NFTs with a lot more like ferocity than was maybe available just on like an OpenSea. And then they also incentivize trading by doing like airdrops. They have their own token, you'll love to know. And that token is used as a reward for people who trade actively on the platform. And so it created this financial energy around NFTs that basically, to the degree that there was any emphasis on what the NFTs actually looked like, because there was, like, in the era you were in this, people did care what the PFPs looked like, and there were traits, there were things called mid-rares, you know, NFTs that like weren't at the very highest end, but were kind of in the mid because certain traits were cool. And Blur basically just flattened that out and basically made it all about the financial energy. And so people feel like they really just brought to the fore that so many of these things were shitcoins with pictures. But I think this is where you and I, this is the core of our disagreement, which is there's actually a whole world of genuine digital art. I mean, Christie's did $13.3 billion in NFT art sales last year, right? And maybe some of that fell in the category of like stupid ape pictures, but some of that is legitimate artworks that people are doing. And again, I would point to somebody like a Tyler Hobbs, who's one of the forefathers in some ways of what the future generative art movement will look like. And while that's small right now, over time, people like me believe that the legitimate use cases here, like that awesome art, will grow in proportion to the stupid use cases, which was asset speculation. And look, people are always going to speculate on things. Like, people like casinos. And I think that's what the super speculative kind of PFP market may retain. But you're like, yeah, okay, I guess there's a sort of legitimate thing for digital artists over here in the corner, but like, it's so small compared to the rest of the stuff that it's stupid. And I'm going, wait, let's actually focus on this thing over here that is really legitimate and has given a lot of digital. I mean, I went to Puerto Rico and talked to artists who are digital first artists for whom they were really excited about this tech because they're like, I'm getting a new, galleries wouldn't accept my work. And now I can create these one-of-one pieces, put them on the blockchain, prove provenance, have all the things that I have in the real world as a digital artist. I now get it in the digital world. I think that's super innovative and interesting.
I think a lot of artists will be hesitant now to even associate themselves with the word NFT because it's been so discredited by this bubble. But
sure.
I'm open to the idea that people could use digital technology in cool ways to support their art. It just has to be like creative and new, the same way I'd want like a painting to be creative and new. And I've been waiting for you to cite Beeple as the example of the good artist. Where do you fall on Beeple?
I believe Beeple is, I would almost call it Jackson Pollock, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I believe he's making art. I believe there's a whole group of people out there who resonate with his work, who find it to be art. And I am fine with that and totally support that. It's not my taste. I don't want a Beeple hanging in my living room per se, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I believe he's an artist and I believe he's a digital artist. But I want to point to you to the many other artists that I think you're maybe not familiar with, who are nothing like Beeple, who are probably a lot more like your sister. Sarah Bauman's another awesome female first artist who paints a lot of women, who is a digital artist and digital creator. And there's a whole world of that out there. And again, and these people are, some of them are being shown in Christie's or Sotheby's. Claire Silver is an amazing AI
but
generative
I don't
artist.
want to give, I don't think we should give Christie's or Sotheby's too much credit. They'll auction anything that will make money. They were auctioning apes as soon as the price went up. There was like and it was amazing the kind of crazy stuff they would say about apes and how they were the future of art. What did they say about the gold ape? They were just like, anyway, they're auctioning these gold apes next to like Van Goghs,
right?
You know,
the gold apes are the.
I don't think their endorsement is very valuable. And there's plenty of like crap in the regular art world too that's not very cool. Like, that's a fair critique.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, I feel like you keep shifting it to like, yes, things are stupid in this world. And my point is, okay, but you also have to acknowledge that there's legitimacy to this as well. And it puts me in an easy position as a debater in this situation, because it feels like all I have to do is be like, okay, but there's some legitimacy. Let's shift gears, because
I'm sure there's lots of cool artists that are doing
doing things with it.
That sounds like but they're definitely not like mainstream. They're not getting any attention from like the crypto people.
That I would push back on that as well to a degree, but let's not worry. I think for me, where it is now is not where I see it being or want it to be in 10 years. Let me put it that way. And I think it makes sense to me that the share of the art market pie that is digital will grow over time, and the share of people who will want to own digital art will grow over time.
Yeah, and I think what I want to tell people is that like these last 2 years were insane. It's easy to forget just how much funny stuff happened. And like, if you want to relive the craziness of this mania that I think will never be seen again, even if there is some sort of future for digital art, you should read this book, because even if you love crypto, it's still, you still are just like, oh my God, I was there and I'm still reading it. I'm like, this stuff really happened? No, like.
Yeah. It's amazing. I really cannot strongly enough recommend that people read the book, probably especially if you're into crypto and NFTs, because you'll recognize it. You'll recognize some of the stuff you're talking about, and some of it will be new, and it's really funny.
I like silliness, and some of these things were just so dumb that I could only admire them. I liked crypto dick butts. I thought that was very funny. And I love that when Three Arrows Capital collapsed, the big hedge fund and the bankruptcy attorneys were going through all their assets, and they're like, how do we recover assets for their institutional investors? And they're like, we've found a crypto dick butt. Maybe we can get $1,000 for this. And I asked Kyle Davies, I was like, you really borrowed billions of dollars from all these hedge funds and you bought crypto dick butts? And he was like, no, that was actually airdropped to me just to try and increase the value of crypto dick butts. So it wasn't his fault. But I also like, there's something about just the chutzpah of NFT people that I'm like, I can't believe it. Yeah. I also thought, what was the one that was like a game, but they hadn't made the game yet, and they're just giving you the words?
Loot. Okay, I want to talk to you about Loot. Or is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Loot. I was just like, oh my God, you guys. You're just like, this is just so brazen. You're just giving them words, a box of words.
Here's a correction.
Yeah.
So do you know who's behind that project? So Dom Hoffman, the creator of Vine, is one of the creators of Loot. You said, and I wasn't even going to bring this up, but in the book you mentioned that they sold, I think you said 8,000. I don't even remember how many Loots there were, but you said they sold 8,000 of them. Those were free. Loot, they didn't actually make any money on Loot. They just put it out there. It's Dom Hoffman. He's experimental. He created Vine. He created
There's no royalty on Loot?
No, I don't know actually if there was.
No, I think there was a royalty.
None of this stuff has royalty.
I think there was a royalty on Loot.
You might be right.
So,
well, but they didn't actually. They gave them away for free to start. Yeah.
That's how I would do my NFT project. It would definitely be a free mint, and I would just collect on royalties. So, but I'm sad that the royalty model has been undermined, because I was planning a free mint for mine.
Yeah, it would have been a big success, I'm sure. People lining up to buy the Crypto Skeptic NFTs.
I actually had a really good idea for an NFT that I think would have worked. Do you want to hear it?
Okay. Yes, and then we'll let the audience judge.
Okay. So, and like, feel free, anyone can have this idea if you want to try it. So picture this. You need some money to run this, to pull this off, because there's some upfront investment involved. Picture this, we're at like word starts to spread at a crypto conference about a mysterious opening or party. And it's like we've rented a warehouse and we've filled it with rats, like live rats. And it's like this is the launch of crypto rats. And it's a free mint. You have to crawl through the rats to like get to the rat NFT to get to mint your NFT. And up on the wall is all sorts of like signs that are like, NFTs are for losers. This is all stupid. And crucially, a really big sign that says, this is not a Banksy. Because these rats, they look like they might be Banksies.
Okay.
And this rat opening is something that Banksy did.
Okay. I guess I can picture, I guess I knew that. But I'm not a close enough follower of Banksy, but I can kind of picture like something
because
in a rat.
Like most NFT people don't know very much about art, but if they know one artist, it's Banksy.
They know Banksy. True.
Yeah. So I think people would be like, okay, I did my research. I know someone else did this Banksy thing before, right? Mm-hmm. Pranksy?
Yeah. What are you saying about Pranksy?
Didn't he was that a sale of fake Banksies? Imitation Banksies or something?
Is that how we got to? You're saying is that how we got to start? I know. Pranksy
I swear somebody did something
a really big
similar.
Collector. Pranksy is a big NFT influencer. and maybe he started that way, but ultimately he
No,
just
let's
became
not
known
say
as
that
a
he
big
did.
collector.
I don't know.
Okay, let's not say that he did.
Anyway, so like the frenzy starts. People are like, wow, this sounds a lot like something Banksy would do. Everyone's like, we got to crawl through. And plus, so little effort is put into most of these projects. They're like, these guys got the whole shitload of rats.
Rat cave.
Clearly, there's big money behind this project. They're able to procure like 1,000 rats. I got to go crawl through that and get my free mint. And they're kind of like crypto punks, but they're rats and they look like Banksies. And I think NFT people love Banksy. They would go wild for crypto rats. And it would become the more he denied it, it would just attract attention to the Crypto Rats project. Yeah. And we'd put up big signs too that are like, these are useless, no utility, no, whatever. So the SEC is not coming after us. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
Okay,
do you think we could have sold any during the peak of the bubble?
No doubt. Are you kidding me? To your point, peak of the bull market, you could have sold something with a third of that. You could have had one rat running around in a sign that said that this is not a Banksy, and you could have sold the shit out of those. So for sure, in today's market, probably going to be a little tougher. Probably going to have to.
No, nothing's going to work now. It's worthless now. Yeah. That's why I'm giving the idea away.
Yeah, smart. You wouldn't have given it away back when it could have actually helped somebody change their life. I got it. Yeah. No, just kidding. Okay, let me ask you a quick, I'm going to say a lightning round, and then I'm going to ask you really broad sweeping questions that are not lightning rounds at all. But because something you just said reminded me of this, and so I want to talk about three things. Okay? I'm going to let you pick where we start. I want to talk about Sam Bankman-Fried. His trial's about to start. We're here in New York. You spent a lot of time with SBF. There's great SBF stories in this book. So I want to kind of get your thoughts on SBF. I want to talk a little bit about Tether. I do think we have to say something about that because Tether was really the thing that got you into investigating this whole world. And the darkest part of this whole book, and the part that I think it's really important that the crypto community acknowledge, is the pig butchering stuff that you get into. You're laughing at me like they're never going to.
Oh no. I'm just like, we're gonna have to go for a second hour. Like this is a lot to cover.
Well, shoot. Okay. Well, and then the third thing, we'll see how long we can run. The third thing was just I wanted to throw a quote in your face, a quote that you had on here, and I want to challenge you on the quote.
Okay. No, go with the quote. Challenge me on the quote.
Go with the quote. So you describe this, you're at Bitcoin Miami. And it's so funny you describing Bitcoin Miami because it is such a ridiculous, wild scene. And these people are ridiculous. And we all just sit here and have to accept the ridiculousness. And it was actually one of the executives at Kraken, I believe, who gets up and you quote him as saying, so this is now you're quoting a Kraken executive speaking at Bitcoin Miami.
Yes.
Number go up tech is a very powerful piece of tech. It's the price. As the price goes higher, more people become aware of it and buy it in anticipation of the price continuing to climb. Now, that is very silly because that is literally it's not describing a Ponzi exactly by any means, but you're in the territory of Ponzinomics for sure. And so you then say, 13 years had passed since Bitcoin was invented. You say some other things. And the best argument that anyone had for Bitcoin was that it was a financial bubble that would just keep growing forever. So now that is your quote based on that Kraken exec quote.
Yes.
Again, this is very funny. But do you actually think that is the best argument for Bitcoin that A, you heard over the course of reporting this book, or B, that it's actually the best argument for Bitcoin?
So, I mean, definitely I picked that quote because it's the worst argument
Hilarious.
For Bitcoin. And that's what the joke is. But
go.
I would also say that it was a very mainstream argument. The star of the show was Michael Saylor, whose argument was not that different. I mean, a lot of people would tell me, well, you haven't been to El Salvador. You haven't seen that it's changing people's lives in El Salvador. And I went there and nobody's using Bitcoin. It was actually hard to report on because nothing was happening. So little was going on. There was almost nothing to say about it. And I felt embarrassed to even try to use Bitcoin because the poor clerks at the stores would be like, ugh, another coin guy. Yeah, I got to go find the Bitcoin machine. This is really annoying. Money works just fine. So I just felt no, that's not the best argument, but none of the arguments were very good. And people were making a lot of bad arguments. Okay,
let me ask you a question. Because we've got Sam Bankman-Fried's trial coming up, I have to get one SBF question out, which is his argument seems to be I just misplaced this $8 billion. I totally did the math wrong in my head. There was this blah, 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 whatever. I didn't really know what was fully going on. And this was all just one big oopsie whoopsie. And he did give you a lot of access. I mean, you talk about it when you were there that he was so open. You were seeing communications that most other people, I think you say in the book, most of the executives would have guarded like state secrets.
Yes.
Is there a chance that, I mean, clearly he knew that customer deposits were being used illegally, but there is just like an oopsie whoopsie here. Like, how much blame or intention do you assign him, having spent a lot of time with him, and versus how much he was just too young to be running something too big and he just made some mistakes?
Yeah, I hung out with him when things were going great. I hung out at FTX for a couple of days. Then I went back there when he was like, it seemed pretty clear the cops were coming. I was like, this is my last chance to talk with this guy. You got to get to the Bahamas right now. And he was nice enough to let me come up to his apartment and hang out for the day, where I had, I won't recount it, but a very, very funny interaction with his one remaining supporter. But here's what I think is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that the prosecutors will use against him. During the period when it looked like Binance was going to bail out FTX, Caroline Ellison, the head of Alameda, called a meeting of all the employees of Alameda, which has to be like one of the weirdest meetings that ever happened at work. Because I think a lot of these people at Alameda did not know what was going on. Mm-hmm. And were just trading, like trying to arbitrage, Dojolon Mars prices across exchanges all day. And she said at this meeting, she's like, hey guys, I got to tell you something. Like, yeah, like we were kind of short on the money because like maybe like Alameda was borrowing like the customer money. And like, I'm really sorry because like I know you all have been working hard. And if you're sleepy, just go take a nap. And like, it was like she was like saying she didn't do her homework for the group project. And obviously everyone at Alameda is freaking out. And these are smart people. And one of them's like, wait, who decided to use the customer money? Who decided that to make us all part of a giant criminal enterprise? And Caroline's like, me, Sam, Gary, and Nishad had a meeting, and we decided to do, and like we talked about it. And then they're like, who decided to do it? Who made the decision? And she's like, Sam did. So this is when she thought they were in the clear. She thought that Binance was going to bail them out, and that like maybe nobody would ever know about any of this. And she was saying at that, because now if Caroline's going to testify against Sam, and Sam's going to say probably, hey, she'd see anything to get out of jail. You can't trust this witness. She's just testifying against me to save herself. But at that time, contemporaneous, she has this meeting. The prosecutors have a tape of the meeting, and she's basically admitting that this was intentional. So I think like, and that's just one thing. I mean, these people are texting all the time. They're emailing. They're on Slack. Like, I'm excited to see what other crazy stuff is gonna come out at the trial.
Was the exact quote "Sam, I guess"? She said, "Sam, I guess."
I think it was. So maybe there's a little doubt there.
Like that's what I'm totally with you. Like, there's just no way. But I think the way Sam characterizes this, he's like he'll kind of allude to this meeting. Oh, we all met, but I wasn't really paying attention. I was packing for whatever.
Yes,
he says he was like packing for some trip during that meeting, and then you've got Caroline saying, Sam, I guess. I mean, it's to me, I'm fully in the camp of like, look, there's obviously so much culpability on this guy's shoulders, but it's been interesting as I've really dug into what he says. I'm just gonna be so eager to see how he tries to wriggle out of this in a courtroom scenario.
Definitely, because when I was with him, he was giving me like these arguments, and I told him, I'm like, these arguments do not sound very convincing. These don't even make sense. And I was like, are you really trying to tell me TLDR? Your ex-girlfriend did it? Is that really your best argument here? And he was just like, oh, I think it wasn't really clear who did it. And I don't know. He's had a lot of time to think about it, and I'm eager to see what he says. But the story I got in that $30 million penthouse did not make sense and wasn't convincing to me, especially given that at that time I'd already heard about this Caroline meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, Zeke, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on, you giving us all this time. Like I said, number go up. It's out now. I so rarely have people who I'm like, I have like NFT project people on, I guess, but like I don't necessarily like try and pump their NFT projects usually. Like this is something where I'm like, specifically, I would love people to go buy the book and read the book or listen to it. I bet it's good on Audible. But get it on Kindle, get it on Audible, get it in person. It's funny. It's super funny. It's super entertaining. I just wanted to push on you because I imagine there are a lot of people who are going to read this book who don't actually understand the core arguments for blockchain, who are going to say, oh my gosh, all these people like me, right, are just so stupid. And I want to be a voice to be like, no. we get that this is funny too, but also there's a core here that's actually quite interesting. And unfortunately, because there's an interesting core, that's what allowed so much of the rest of this to get to the levels it got to, because they were able to kind of point to this core interesting thing while they ran their scams.
And I would say to the listeners and to you, two-step thing, fix MetaMask so that like a normal person might be able to use it. And number two, you should identify the scammers and cast them out from your world instead of promoting them and profiting from whatever their latest project is.
I'm totally with you. I think that we should, as a community, stop giving them air, and it hurts all of us. And just fully concur, Zeke. And thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for making the point. Thanks for writing this book.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It was really fun. Thanks for hearing out my Banksy project idea. And it's not too late. I want to see somebody get this in action.
Let's get the rats going. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.